seeing a way out. You mentioned this before, and I've heard you share this before, and I have to ask, this dice game that you're playing at the bars, what you rolling dice, the highest one wins type deal, or how does this work?
Oh my God, it's been a while. It's been so long since I've shook for shots. But yeah, it's basically for shots. You get a group of people, get a dice box, and there's games called like aces or threes, ship captain crew, and you shake, everybody goes around, and the loser buys a round of shots. So basically, you lose money and you get drunk, and it's a lose-lose situation now that I look at it. But it was something to do to pass the time because, especially in this state, there's not much to do in the winter time, so we go to the bar and we just find these games to play. So I do not recommend it because you lose money and you end up getting drunk, and it's never a good thing.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, now I see it. So if the pool table was full or something, this would be another thing to get involved. And you mentioned that too, and we've known each other for quite a while from Sober Buddy meetings and now Sober Motivation meetings. And a big part of your story, and you shared it there too, is just like going out every single night. And I imagine somewhere in there you're probably telling yourself at some point, I've got to stop going out. I've got to make changes. I'm going to quit tomorrow. It seems to be a common trend with most people's journeys. But what's that life like going through it too? Some things I'm sure are enjoyable, and I think it's really important too. We honor some part of the stories where it wasn't necessarily, I think for a lot of people, disastrous all the time, right? We found community, we found connection, we found relationships and in drinking and going out and stuff. But what does a life like that look like for you?
Yeah, and like you said, I had a great time too, Brad. It wasn't all terrible. I thought I did enjoy the company of the people that I went with, hung out in the bars with, and formed a lot of relationships and friendships out of it. We went to like brewer games and stuff like that, and other events and concerts and stuff like that. So it wasn't all terrible, but it was just hard. I know deep down inside I wanted a different life, and I just couldn't get out of it. Like you said, I think you brought up this in one of the meetings this week. If you ask me, I keep doing this over and over again, right? Keep going out every day, keep going to the bar, keep drinking, and I feel terrible the next day, and I feel shameful and whatnot, and I wish I had a better life, a better way out of it. And it's like you asking me, why do you always choose the hard road? And that'd be like me saying, well, why do you assume I see two roads? I didn't see those two roads. That's what it felt like to me at that time every day. There was not another path I could go down. And it sounds weird to say, but that's how I felt. Like you said, that's that hopelessness feeling you get, that feeling that you just built your life around this type of lifestyle, that you don't see another path. You just see this one road, and you took it, and you don't know how to get off it anymore. You're so far down on it that it's hard to get off of it at that point. So yeah, I did have a lot of fun. I don't regret it. It's maybe the person who I am today, and stronger than ever, and I have no regrets about it. But yeah, it was tough. It was tough and fun at both the same time, like you said.
Yeah. And I think too, over time, right? Like it decreases, right? The percentage. So just to guess here, 20% disastrous type stuff, and then maybe 80% of it is enjoyable to begin with. And then I feel like over time, the longer we stay in the game kind of deal, that percentage creeps together, and then the scales tip at some point to where it becomes more chaos, and just really, and also that intuition, right? And then some people say gut feeling. We have that gut feeling that we could be doing more with our life. We have more to offer this world, and there's other things we want to do with it, but it becomes really challenging when we're hungover every day, and that's the lifestyle we're living. And you mentioned that a little bit too. So going through things like, what's going on in your life through your 30s about you got the same job for 18 years and you never really got any trouble with that deal? And I think that's a thing some people share too. Well, I got my job still. I'm not that bad. I'm not in that bad of a spot. How do things look like for you moving forward?
Yeah, my health really started to decline. My physical health really started to decline, along with my mental health too. It was just exhausting, physically and mentally. Physically, my body, up until the end, I suffered from terrible, I was very overweight. I lost 100 pounds the first year I got sober. So I was very overweight, and most of that weight I contribute to drinking. And so my physical health, I had inflammation towards the end. I was so tired. I was so weak. Wasn't even a loss of appetite. I had no appetite because I was drinking so much that I couldn't eat anymore. Eating was like a chore. Going out to eat with people, I hated going out to eat with people because I wanted to eat, but I couldn't. My body was shutting down so much that it couldn't take in food. I'd take a few bites and that was it. It was just terrible to not be able to enjoy these little things that everybody else can. You know, the night sweats, the shaking, the sleep deprivation, the racing heart, the shakes. I mean, I had you Google effects of alcoholism on a body. I suffered from that for the last 5, maybe 6, 7 years up until I got sober. Every day I had everything, and it was just getting worse and worse. There were some mornings towards the end where I would look in the mirror and I would look to see if I had jaundice, the yellow in my eyes, the yellow on my skin, because I knew my liver was starting to shut down because I could just feel that in my body, those types of effects. And then my mental health too. It's exhausting to try to always find alcohol for every situation you're in, to make sure it's there for you. Make sure you have a backup. Make sure you have enough at home during the night. It was mentally exhausting, so it was just breaking me down at the end. And I knew at some point, probably the last 6 months of last year, I knew something was going to happen, Brad. I could feel it in my gut. Every other day, I'm like, something's going to happen. I'm like, I can't live like this anymore. You know, I'm talking, this is probably like when I'm 39 years old, and I'm like, I just can't, how much longer can I do this? How much longer can my body hold up with this, or my mind, before something happens? And I honestly thought it was going to be something with the police officers. I was going to get pulled over again, and I'll get another DUI or something, or some other crazy thing like that. I'm like, something's got to give, because I couldn't do it myself. I just knew at that point that there was no way I could do it on my own. It was going to have to be some big life event that had to, like a rock bottom. And it was a rock bottom for me moment, December 2021, that really just absolutely changed my life forever, you know?
Yeah. So yeah, as you go through there too, 6, 7 years of going through all of those symptoms too. And probably, I'm just guessing here, but probably wanting nothing more than to quit, but just not having the direction or having that insight on how you're going to go about doing this, and feeling all those effects too physically. Yeah, I'll never forget that stuff. You're just in a constant anxious state. And when it comes to the drinking, it's just that constant anxiety of, heart racing, worrying about. I would go to bed some nights and I would just have the last thought I would have before I just went to sleep was like, I don't know if I'm going to wake up in the morning. And it was scary, but it's like when you're in that, like you mentioned earlier, you just don't see a way out of it. And I wouldn't say I was like okay with that, but I just accepted that as my life, which was like, it's such a terrifying place to be. And you bring up the mental health aspect of things too. I think for anybody who's drinking too much, it takes a heavy hit. So what happens on December 20th?
Yeah, December 2021 it was. I ended up going to the Twin Cities for Christmas with my family, small family gathering. And the week prior, that whole week up until that point, I drank extremely heavy. I had the whole entire week off of work, so I was even hitting the bottle even way worse than I normally do. I just remember going to the bar every single day and just hitting it hard. So that whole week I was drinking extremely heavy. And when we got to St. Paul in the Twin Cities, it was just a normal day. We had a couple drinks for lunch. I didn't really drink heavy that day. In the evening, my family, we had dinner reservations to a place to go out to eat. And of course, I wasn't hungry because at that point, I just had no appetite. So I didn't want to go to the restaurant and take 2 bites and just not eat anything. So I just told them I was going to just stay behind and take a nap. And next thing I know, I'm on my back on the floor and I got paramedics above me. And I'm just in a state of utter confusion. And they're asking me, what, do you know where you're at? Do you know what's going on? Do you know where you are? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm confused. What happened? And they told me that I had a seizure. So I guess I literally dropped down to my knees and I face planted on my niece's rug, split my upper lip wide open. I ended up getting 16 stitches in my upper lip. I have a wonderful scar that I can see every day to remind me of that night. But then I started seizing right there on the floor, and I was very confused. I didn't know what was going on. They told me that, and I remember turning to my sister and brother-in-law that were there, and they just had this look of utter terror. Like, I can't even imagine the last, minutes? How many minutes I was out, convulsing on this floor, what I just put them through. And it was scary. It's one of those images that's burned in your brain. But you don't forget that what you put someone you love so much, that kind of expression on their faces, it's hard, So, anyway, they took me to the hospital in the ambulance. I end up having a seizure in the ambulance, and I had one more seizure in the emergency room, and I stayed 2 nights in the hospital there. And obviously the doctors come and talk to me after they stitched me up, and they told me the reason I seized was because it was alcohol withdrawals. And I was like, at first I was confused. They even mentioned alcohol. I'm like, obviously my family told them. They knew I had a problem, even though I tried to hide about it. They told them I was an alcoholic. And I'm like, alcohol withdrawals? I'm like, I drank today. I'm like, and I drank the whole week. I'm like, I had 2 drinks for lunch. I had a couple in the afternoon. I go, how can it be alcohol withdrawals? And they told me, it's because you didn't drink enough alcohol today. And that scared the ever-loving crap out of me. I mean, I didn't even know you could have seizures and this type of reaction for drinking so much alcohol and not having enough that your body and brain just shuts down like that. I had no idea. This was all new to me. Of course, I didn't believe it, and I'm in my hospital bed, and I'm Googling it on my phone, just like trying to understand what was going on because I was so confused. So it was hard. I stayed 2 days. I was tied to the bed. I was on watch for falling because of that. Luckily, I didn't have any more seizures after that, and they talked a lot about when I came back to Wisconsin to go into some inpatient and outpatient programs, and they ended up prescribing me naltrexone, so I was on naltrexone for the first 3 months. This is all new to me. This is all stuff that I never heard of. It was just a huge traumatic event in my life that was life-changing. So that day, and I've been sober since. That was 1,000 days ago, but it was hard in the beginning. But yeah, that's really what, that rock bottom, that's what I needed to open my eyes and just let me know, to be honest with myself and be honest with my family that I have a way out. I see that there's support now. There are options. There are people that love me and that want to support me and want to see me succeed in life. And I want to see myself succeed. Once you start getting a few days of sobriety, the clarity started coming, and it just took off from there. Not right away, but yeah, that was the moment that really changed my life and set me on a new trajectory.
Yeah. Wow. Great job. 1,000 days too. We mentioned that earlier, which is incredible. Just leading up to that event too, because you mentioned to your family they had an idea that you were struggling with alcohol and stuff too. Was there anybody mentioned to you, like, try to quit over the years? Conversations like that?
Whoa. No, they didn't really mention it to me, but I think that's a lot with my family history. Like my father's alcoholism, and one of my older sisters, her addiction, and she was one of the types of alcoholics that was just a tornado. When she went on binges, she destroyed everything in her life. She lost jobs, she lost relationships. And so as far back as I was little, my father and her battling their alcoholism in our family was always around, was always talked about. So I think my family gave me space by the time when I got old, because I'm the youngest out of 5 girls. So by the time I got a little bit older and they realized that I had a problem, I think they realized that they can't force me to get sober, because they know they couldn't force my father, they couldn't force my sister. So I think they knew to give me that space, and I'm very thankful, because I think if they would have mentioned it to me, I would have got very defensive. I wasn't ready to admit it. Up until that day, I don't think I was ready to admit it. Even though deep down inside I wanted to, I just couldn't do it. It was that shame. It was that guilt. It was all those things that you bury, that you don't want to acknowledge that you're that out of control. So they didn't bring it up to me. They gave me that space. But afterwards, of course, they told me, yeah, we knew about it the whole time. But I'm glad that they didn't, because I would have definitely pushed back. It wasn't I wasn't ready. I had to be ready for myself and do it myself in my time. And I'm so thankful that they were around when I had those seizures, because that could have happened right in my house when I was alone driving a car. I'm extremely blessed and fortunate that they were around for that when that incident happened, because I could have bled out right here on my kitchen floor. So it's crazy how it just all aligned, and they didn't push me, but they were there when I needed them the most in my life, and they've been lifting me up ever since.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. So you had this moment too, right? It's so scary too, and I was even thinking that about the timing of everything and how it happened. It's not obviously anything that we want anybody to do or have to go through. But yeah, I mean, you could have been driving or so many different other situations that it could have went a lot of different ways. So you're there in that moment, and you've been doing this for decades, right? You've been drinking for decades at this point, and you end up in the hospital. What was it about that? Did that just make it real, or did you get some education or some different insight, or did an aha moment? What about in that moment changed maybe your perspective on where you were in your life and that you had to put in the work to make a difference here?
Yeah, I think it was the first day my sister visited me, and we talked a little bit when I was in the hospital, and she asked me straight up the question, "Are you an alcoholic?" And I told her no. My answer was no, and she just let it be. We talked a little bit more whenever she went home or went back to my niece's house, came back the next day, obviously, to visit me, talked a little bit, and she said again, "Are you an alcoholic?" And I just remember feeling like my heart dropped, and I'm like, I have to admit it at this point. Obviously, this is my opportunity to become honest with myself and actually admit it and say it out loud, and I did, and I said yes. And she asked me why I answered differently the day before, and I just said it was hard to admit. It's just hard to admit that, like I said, you lost control of your life like that. So that was honestly my big moment where I know I can really go back to that point where that seed got planted in my brain, that finally getting honest with myself that I can have a different life if I choose. This is the first step, admitting you having a problem and accepting that I'm powerless over it. You know, I truly am powerless over it. So that was my first seed that got planted. And of course, it takes a while for it to grow, but that's what really got me going to think that I could actually choose a different life. And when I got out of the hospital, I was only going to be 3 weeks. I was only going to go on a break. I was only going to say, okay, I'm going to heal up my lip. I'm just going to take 3 weeks off, see what happens, try to slow down. I didn't want to give it up at that point still, but I didn't. Like, I knew in my gut I wanted to, but it's so hard to give up that life, Brad. Like you said, I built my life around it. It was my comfortable blanket that I had at all times with me. And to envision your life without something like that is absolutely terrifying. All your friendships, all your relationships, all the events, weddings you go to, barbecues you go to, anything. Football season's right now. Alcohol's around everything. And for that to be removed from your life is absolutely terrifying. So initially I was only going to take a 3-week break, but then I got on that medication. I got on the medication right away, naltrexone, for the first 3 months. That really helped with the craving part, so I could at least focus on not having that craving part so much where I need to have that drink. That was blocked by that medication, and I could focus on different things, on like going on online communities, going on Facebook and whatnot, and seeing that there's actually communities out there that support you. And there are other people that are out there that are living a sober life. I had no idea. I didn't know. I didn't know there was such a huge community, a sober community out there of people recovering from my type of life that know what have I gone through and what I've been through and what I've been battling. It was incredibly eye-opening, and it just launched me into wanting more, to find out more about it, get more knowledge on it. Okay, what's this person doing? Why, look at this person. They got 6 months sober. This person's got 5 years sober. It was amazing to me. I'm like, I couldn't believe these people could do it, because I didn't think I could do it, but obviously there are people out there doing it, you know? So it was quite an interesting start for me. Like I said, I didn't jump into it right away. It was a slow roll, but I got excited when I started seeing everybody else being able to do what I really wanted to do deep down inside for so long, was to enjoy life and not be addicted to this substance every single day.
Yeah. And it just ends up consuming so much of our time and energy. Like, it's just, you wake up thinking about drinking and then just go from there, right? And then it's like you mentioned there too, you got to make sure you have enough here, there, where am I going? What am I doing? Everything like that. It's a really powerful story you share, though, about your sister coming the first day and asking you the question, and then coming back the second day and asking you the same thing. I think that a lot of people struggle with that. Once I admit something, then I've either got to do something about it or work twice as hard to just bury it even further. About if I admit that I have a problem with drinking or that I'm an alcoholic, if I say that out loud, then I might actually have to do something here to change my life. And then, what is all the other stuff you listed too? What is my life going to look like? I've never known a life, adult life anyway, that didn't involve this. And this was just everything. This was a cornerstone of life and for you, for your life. So it's so scary to think, what am I going to do? Like, literally, what am I going to do? And I imagine early on you had to figure out what you do. I mean, you're maybe changing your routine. I think you did still go out and socialize with people a little bit differently early on too. But how do things start to change in your life, and what things do you start doing to operate differently?
Yeah, so I still ended up going out to the bars and stuff, and I just wouldn't order a drink. I just have a cranberry soda and seltzer or whatever, because I couldn't, like I said, I couldn't envision my life anything different, because that was what I had. That's what I did all the time. But then I just started noticing, I'm like, I don't want to be around these people that drink all the time anymore. It took me about a year before I stopped really going to the bars and hanging out with those folks, because I just didn't want that life anymore. So early on, like I said, I started moving. I started losing weight because I didn't drink all those calories and that sugar I drank. My weight just started flying off. I started walking. I started moving more. Nothing crazy or anything like that. But just eliminating alcohol and getting a little bit of movement in, I started getting healthier. I started getting sleep. Once you actually get a good night's sleep, 2 decades of sleep deprivation, when you actually get some good night's sleep, it's addicting. But actually get a full night's rest, I just started seeing the beautiful effects physically, from being sober. All the problems I was having, I didn't realize it was all alcohol related. Everything. It just started getting better and better. My blood pressure started getting better. And then my mental health too. Not being so physically or mentally exhausted by, like you said, trying to find a way to drink every day, trying to hide it, trying to make sure I have my hand on that drink all the time. When you have your mind freed up, all that space you have, it's both scary, but it's also free. You could do all these different things. And I just started making lists of hobbies I used to like to do, some things I like to try. I just didn't sit around. And that's what I did my whole life. I just sat around and drank. And then when you remove that, it was just awesome. It was a slow roll, but I just started seeing, it was like a new life got into me. Like I was reborn again, where I could just erase the last 20 years and I could just start over basically. And I can. You can always start over. You can wake up every day and you can have a new start. Even if you slip, you can still start over and go for that goal that you wanted your whole life. And when you start having that clarity and all these opportunities, and it just makes you stronger, it gives you more confidence in life, and it's a ripple effect. The strength of my sobriety is giving me so much strength in my regular day life now. I have stronger relationships. I have stronger friendships. Maybe not as many, because we all know when you quit drinking, you do lose a lot of friendships. But the ones I have mean that much more to me when I can devote more time to them. Like you said, Brad, I'd rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies. I'd rather have those 4 close friends than 100 friends. That means so much more to me. And same thing with my family, too. It really opened up a whole new world that I didn't know existed, and it's been awesome. It's been a struggle and awesome at the same time, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's what it is. People often ask, too, does it get easier or not? And I'm always torn, and you've probably heard me have this discussion before, but I think it's a little bit of both. it gets easier, but we also develop the tools and the things that we didn't have before. I think, too, after a while, we really bust through that barrier to where before we believed alcohol was improving our life or enhancing our life. And at the end, when we get sober, we start to see through that was a lie that we bought into at some point. And alcohol just brings absolutely no value to our life. It doesn't help improve any aspect of our life. Even all the things we thought we couldn't do, the shows, you bring up the football, that's getting kicked off. All these things that we just were so terrified of doing. I mean, I used to love the Sunday football because the boys would, watch the early game, and then I could just hide out in the background and start drinking. And then my girlfriend at the time, it was just normal. I just fit in. It was like, oh, that's great. It wasn't a problem. Everybody was doing it. But the thing is, like, they eventually stopped and went to bed. I just kept it going. It was always that excuse. I always found myself in those situations where I would just, oh, man, if it was a weekend and there was something happening early on in the day, it was just a golden ticket to just get the party going. Other people did it too, but I never asked them, but I think we had different missions. When I started drinking, it was just to not feel anything, to be able to fit in. For other people, I think maybe there's an extent of that, just to kind of loosen up a little bit, but also know where the line needs to be drawn and just not get it out of hand. I wasn't really like an out of hand person. I would fall down and stuff. I would never cause sometimes I did cause a little bit of a ruckus and I would get in trouble and stuff like that. But most of the time it was just sort of like internally destroying myself. So I love that too, and in realizing the benefits of things and really honing in on that and focusing on that can help us out so much. All the benefits you're experiencing and you have experienced really can keep us motivated to keep going, but not to take away from the fact that it's still a struggle. And I've known you for a while, and you've went through stuff like we all do, in a sense, different things for each person. But in our sobriety journey, where we have to continuously do that work on ourselves to keep this thing going. What's that been like for you? Some of the things you've overcome, and maybe something that surprised you about the journey.
Yeah, I mean, so I actually ended up, like, this last winter, I actually ended up going back on naltrexone for about 3 months. So this last November till January or so, I did go back on it because I was, going off the deep end a little bit. I just needed a little bit of extra help to get me through the winter. So I've learned that, even though I take so many steps forward, sometimes it's okay to take a step back sometimes if you need a little bit of extra support. So I've definitely gone through some struggles too. And I had some incidents this summer as well where it was my biggest test of sobriety. It really tests you. You just want to drown out these emotions that you go through. But I have all these tools that I've built that going to these meetings and hearing everybody's vulnerable shares and the strengths, that when life gets me down, I don't automatically go to that bottle, even though I used to all the time. I now have all these other tools where I can hop on a meeting, I can go for a walk, I can listen to podcasts or listen to a book to get me through those moments. So all the stuff that I've learned through sobriety, you can just apply it to your life. It's amazing. That's the biggest thing that surprised me, is that they both really go hand in hand. What you learned, what you use to stay sober, you can use in your daily life to keep you going in life, so you don't go back to drinking. It seems simple, but that you don't realize that when you're drinking every single day.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it definitely intertwines, right? About how we take care of ourselves. And two, I mean, I'm hearing from you there that you really learned how to ask for help and accept that help out there for you. And there's absolutely no shame in doing that. I always think about it too, right? Because you're so right. Sometimes we go a few steps forward and a few steps back. And I always think about the bow and arrow. The arrow only gets its velocity from going backwards. And so you pull it back, and then it's okay, I went back a few steps. But then you let the rope or whatever go, and then the arrow's just boom, it's gone so fast. So I think that's just it's part of the journey. It's not always going to be what do some people say? It's not linear. Yeah, it's not always just going to be straight up and everything like that. There's going to be struggles, and it's about tapping into those tools that we've learned along the way. And I think just really getting to that place and realizing alcohol is not going to improve my life or my situation. So even though I might want to drink, I have to break through that. I've got to get a little bit deeper about where I'm at and realize that this is not going to help me. It never did before. Another thing I picked up too as a consistent thing throughout your story there with different things you shared, it was like that anything but the alcohol perspective of even when you had the seizure at the end, I'll take a 3-week break. Anything but the alcohol. In other situations in your life too, right? I'll change all this other stuff in my life. I'll change what I'm drinking, when I'm drinking, how I'm drinking, everything else. But we protect the alcohol because of, I think part of it is because of the fear of living without it and what a life like that may be. Stephanie, thank you so much for jumping on here and sharing your story. I'm just thinking towards wrapping up. If somebody is in that cycle of drinking, or maybe they're struggling in their journey of sobriety, what would you mention to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you're struggling, if you're just thinking about it, or if you're just starting on it, on the journey, I would just, 3 words, choose your hard. Either way you go on this path, if you're in a fork in the road, you can either keep going down the road where you're drinking every day or just binge drinking or whatever it is, great drinking. That's, that road. You've been down that road, and that road is hard. It's full of darkness, it's full of shame, it's full of guilt, anxiety, self-doubt, exhaustion, chaos, bad relationships. That's hard. You've been down there, and you know where you end up. There's no light at the end of that tunnel. But if you go down that other path that's also hard, which is sobriety, and it's equally as hard, if not harder sometimes, you have the opportunity to grow at least. There is a light at that end of that tunnel, or through that tunnel, where you can grow and you can learn some discipline, deal with your trauma, deal with your emotions, and rebuilding old relationships, adding new relationships, getting freedom from your mental circus that you've been playing with, like you said, that cycle that you've been battling for however so long. You have that opportunity to go down that road, give you some freedom with that, some physical and mental health, some balance back into your life, some peace. That's another thing I never had is peace. Everything was chaos and anxiety all the time. Choose your hard. They're both hard, and one's going to require a lot of work, but man, that work pays off, and you won't believe how much the work you put in sobriety, like I said earlier, can affect your day life and improve your day life. It's astounding. I thought getting sober was just quitting drinking. That's it. I'm just going to quit drinking and everything's going to suck. I'm not going to have a life, like you said, Brad. Nothing's going to be fun anymore. It couldn't be anything further from the truth. Once you get some time under your belt, you choose that hard path as well, the opportunities are just unlimited. So you already been down that one road. You know where it goes. It doesn't go anywhere, like you said. Why not try something new? Why not? What do you got to lose?
Yeah, beautiful. And that is the changes that take place, right? So many people talk about it and share about it too. And I think this drinking alcohol is like buying a lottery ticket that we already know is not a winner. Who would do that, right? You already know the outcome. And that's so many people's stories. And not everybody is out there in the world has a problem or a bad relationship or whatever with alcohol. But if you listen to this podcast, there's probably something inside that's telling you that it's not helping you, that there's something more to life for you, that you want to show up differently. I think for a lot of people, I don't know everybody in this world. I don't know everybody's story, but all the ones I hear is it just doesn't get better. Like no matter what you try or what you do or how many years you put it off for, it doesn't get any better. And most stories share that it just gets worse and worse. And you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait for these things to happen. You don't have to wait to be in a hospital. You don't have to wait for all this other stuff. So I think if somebody's out there and they're, considering it, right? I know there's a lot of people out there, they're checking the boxes, right? Things are pretty good here, right? I got my job and things aren't too bad here and too bad there. But things are going to be a heck of a lot better if you just give it up. And I think that's the thing. Some of us are waiting for the bottom to completely fall out. And some of those stories end up where it's too late. Some of those stories end up where it's too late to turn things around. So get things going, Stephanie. Great job on 1,000 days. It's been incredible. Thank you for letting me be a part of your story, a part of your journey. And yeah, anything else you have before we sign off?
I think I summed it all up, and I just want to thank you, Brad, for being there. I've been on Sober Buddy community since it started, and now I'm with you in the Sober Motivation in the mornings, and you're my mentor, and I know you don't have all the answers. You say that all the time. I don't have all the answers. Nobody does, and this journey isn't linear, but it's worth it. It's worth trying. Like you said, there's nothing good ever comes out of going down that dark road, and I just appreciate all the knowledge you have and what you share with us in Sober Motivation, and can't wait to keep growing.
Yeah, of course, 100%. Thank you. Well, there it is, everyone. Another incredible story here on the podcast. I'll drop Stephanie's contact information for Instagram down in the show notes below. And as always, if you have yet to leave a review on Apple or Spotify, jump over there and do that after checking out this incredible episode.